G'day YouTube, just a quick video of a high cube container I purchased to use as a shed on my new acreage property we bought. Basically rural Queensland. We just bought 7 acres for some peace and quiet. We're about 15-20 minutes from a small town, local small town. And just this is a video of it, me buying it. It cost about $3,500 delivered and purchased. It's a 40-foot high cube container. And I just had to get it delivered by a truck and then craned in, so it was two separate, or the delivery was included. I think it was $2,800 delivered to here, and then it was $350 to get the crane in to move. I dodged a bit of a bullet here. I didn't get it on video, but the truck actually got stuck. We had a lot of rain just before this, and that was really muddy down the back, and he literally sunk into the ground, and we only just got him out, so that would have been a big expense if I'd have had to get that truck towed out. There was a slight uphill slope going out of the property, and he was stuck, like he just sunk into the ground. That was so half my fault. I wanted him to unload in a specific spot, and he could only unload on one side because of the truck he was using, and so I it was as close as I could get him, and then the crane just had to basically lift it up and drop it down. So this is called setting out. This is just sort of a rough layout for where I wanted. I just used some timbers and some posts just as a temporary setup until I'm going to jack it up in place and put some proper footings down. You can see that's a septic home treatment plant under the ground there, that green thing, and basically I'm spanning over that, so the container, the load of the container is behind and in front of that, and I've got an intermediate bearer as well, which keeps it off that. So the point loads of the container are actually well behind and in front of that home treatment plant, so there's no risk to damage it or anything like that, and I can get under there if I need to fix anything. Here's the formula you use to get a square anywhere, but it's for setting out. So when you're building a house or whatever, you got to do your set out first, which is basically drawing lines and points where the house or whatever's going to go, the structure. So basically I know it as a squared, I think it's a squared times b squared equals square root c. I've forgotten how I do it. I know when I do it. Basically and you get that diagonal, and what that diagonal figure does is it tells you when it's exactly 90 degrees. And you use obviously the shortest side and then the longest, one of the long sides, and then you get your diagonal between the end of the shortest side and the end of the long side, and that angle in there ends up being 90, and then you flip it over and you do the other long side. So this is the same way the pyramids were basically constructed, so it's highly accurate if you do it right. And when you get the two 90-degree angles, then you've only got that remaining angle at the end to fill in. Obviously you can just measure that, but you end up with a perfect right angle starting off your original line, so the short line at the bottom, if you imagine that's the end of the container. The timbers I used for the temporary footings, because they are only temporary, I did allow a couple of inches either side of the container, so I could actually move the timbers side to side a little bit when it was being dropped down. So I also had to level up the pads. So what I did was I allowed a little bit of fall to one side. There's a little bit of a lean on it. I did that deliberately because I wanted to get rained on and weather and get washed, so I don't have to pressure clean it in a few months because I'm going to paint it. But I also use string lines to get it level, which you can see on the ground. So I'll just go over that again. So now I'll put it up so you can see it. So you can see the orange lines there. I've got string lines and little levels on there to get the pad reasonably level. I actually allowed a little bit of fall to one side on the downhill slope because I'm going to let the rain weather it, so I don't have to pressure clean it. You'll use a lot of water pressure cleaning this, so I'll just do the two sides maybe and then paint the whole thing. I'm just going to use Penetrol and house paint. I was talking to another house painter, and I asked him, because it's such a large area, like usually you'd be sandblasting and using rust converters and whatnot, but it's such a large area, it's going to be very expensive to do. So what I'll end up doing is I've got a whole heap of old paints out there, or I'll go down to the paint shop and buy some mist tints, and I'll mix up a colour that's close to what I'm going to use, and I'll just spray it with that. So I've got a big 6-foot spray extension, so I can stand back and I can spray it without scaffold or anything, and I just climb up on top to spray the roof. So I'm just going to clean it down, and I'm going to use Penetrol on the rust directly. Then I'm going to put Penetrol, which is a chemical, in the paint, and then I'm just going to use exterior house paint, just because of the large area and the cost associated with using an epoxy or something else. here's the crane I hired. So the total cost of this was it was about $3,500. The container I think was 28, and then the delivery and the getting it craned in place. The crane I think was about $350, $400 for the crane. So to get the guy out with the dog limb and just move it into place, because you've got to do that obviously. Once it's where I want it, I will jack it up. I'm going to use some big 4-wheel drive jacks and jack up each corner and put some more permanent footings in place. The reason I did this was I was going to build a shed, like a big Meccano shed or something like that, and the kit was going to cost me, just the kit was going to cost me 10, maybe 12,000 just for the kit. And then I started looking at shipping containers. I thought, well, we're out in the middle of nowhere. And I sort of put it behind the house and off to one side, so when you're driving past, it's not a huge eyesore. And I set it back a little bit to that carport, so it doesn't block our view. We've got a pretty nice view down the back, all gum trees and everything. We've got a dam as well. So anyway, this is what we did, and total cost was about $3,500. The timber's probably about $100 in scrap timbers, which I use for a fence anyway. I built a fence at the front. Yeah, anyway, thanks for watching.